actions, scene 4.
Is it,
Yes, you're good.
After my grandfather died, then my grandmother's health wasn't very good, and she kind of deteriorated, and they moved her in with my mom and dad, and that didn't work for too long. She had dementia, and they put her in a hospital, not a hospital, but a home in St. Pete, and then later moved her to one in Tampa, where she passed away. And then they sold her house there. It was on 15th Street in Bradenton.
They should have kept it.
So by that time, we lived in St. Pete. My mom and dad lived in Bradenton, but shortly after she died, they moved to, not Ruskin. Riverview, yeah, on the river up there, where they stayed until my father passed away in 75. And then my mother moved in with us and lived there with us till her death in 99.
So when you first came to Florida, all 3 girls were at the same school?
Yes, they all went to Palmetto High. And then when Vicki was in her senior year is when we moved to St. Pete, and she didn't want to move because she wanted to graduate with her class in Palmetto. So then she stayed, the second semester of school, she stayed with my folks. And then when she graduated, then she moved up to St. Pete with us. She and I graduated the same time, same year, 71. So.
Any key stories that you can remember with my mom in California?
Oh gosh, let's see now. What did I say I was going to do with you?
The shoes.
Oh, well, this isn't going to put a very good light on me, but when she was little, my mother and I took her to Pomona, and I was getting shoes and let her get out of her stroller. And I'm trying on shoes and look up, and here's a black man carrying her back in the store that she had gone outside. And he wanted to know if she belonged to anybody in the store. We claimed her, but a little bit embarrassed about the whole thing.
How many shoes did you buy?
Yeah, I don't remember if I bought any or not. I was probably too embarrassed. And then one of Brenda's little episodes was was at school, and they were playing, I don't know if it was dodgeball. Anyway, she went to get a ball, and a boy kicked it, and when he kicked it, he hit her chin, and her tongue was between her teeth. And they called me from the school and said that I needed to come and look and take her to the doctors. Well, she had a big gap across the inside of her tongue, quite far back. So I took her up to the doctors, and he said, well, they don't normally put sutures in, but it was so big he felt like they had to. So he put a string on the end of her tongue and told me to hold her tongue out while he did the stitches. So I'm standing there holding her tongue out. He's sewing, and then when he got all done, I almost passed out. I had to sit down because I had just about fainted. And let's see, with Lori.
Remember the 3
Oh.
weeks?
That's another one where they probably should have put me away. Lori was born November 6th. And of course, Thanksgiving is in the early 20s. So we were going to go to my mom and dad's for Thanksgiving dinner. So I got the baby ready first. Put her in her crib and had her all dressed pretty and everything. And we get in the car and we get up to my folks. My mother comes out and says, well, where's the baby? And I looked at Bill and he looked at me. Oh my God, we forgot the baby. Oh, it was terrible. And all I could think of was the house would be catching on fire. you know, nobody there. So I got in the car, raced back to the house, went in and got her, and she was fine, brought her to the dinner. But I read all these stories about people forgetting their babies in the back of the seat, and then other people are saying, oh, that's crazy, nobody would do that if they had any sense, but it happened. So that was just 2 or 3 little episodes when they were growing up.
Where did you guys vacation?
When we lived in California, we used to go out to the desert a lot. We had a camper, and we would go with our friends Pete and Elaine, and they had 2 children, Sandy and Chuck. We both had campers, and Pete was always good at finding out of the way places to go. So we'd let him lead the way and we'd go. One time we found a really neat place, and it was kind of dark when we got there, but somebody had been there before because there was cement poured. So we were playing music and we danced and we had a good time. The next morning we woke up and there was a funny noise. And we looked out the window and there was an airplane tarmac out there, and a plane was going down the tarmac. We thought we were all by ourselves, but we really weren't. And I think people had gone to that area looking for UFOs and things, we heard later. And then another time we went to Joshua National Park, and it was a real nice park, but the day after we left, they had a bad earthquake in California, and the roads going to that place got all crumbled up because of the earthquake. So we left at a good time when we went home. We used to go to the Salton Sea a lot. That was always nice. My dad had a boat, my brother had a boat, and we water skied, and the guys fished, and it was a nice place to go. We had friends that went there. My mom and dad had a trailer there, and then we had our camper, and somebody else, I'm trying to think, well, Pete and Elaine would come down once in a while.
Pauline and the other guy.
Yeah, Pauline and Dwayne Loomis came, and there was a bar there that you could go dance at night and drink, and it was good. We had a good time. The only thing is you couldn't go in the summer. The first time we went in the summer, and it was terrible. The temperature was over 100, and the fish were dying. They were just floating in the water. It was awful. So we learned to go in the fall and winter and not in the summer. And then we went up to the mountains a few times. We got a place at Green Valley, which was really nice. The water was colder than heck, but the area was nice and kids could swim. And
Where did Brenda get stuck in the?
Oh, Brenda got stuck when we went out to the desert one time, and they have a lot of, they're not caves really, but they're, I don't know what you would call them. They're kind of like a cave, but they're above ground, and you can crawl through them and up on them, and they were going to go for a hike in those things, and Brenda was told to wait because Pete and Bill were there, and then the other kids, and they were kind of leading the way. Well, she didn't wait, and she got stuck, and it took a little bit, and then they finally got her out. But you have to be careful when you're out there in the desert because they have flash floods that just come up like nothing, and that's not a good place to be in one of those things if it starts flooding. But other than that, I can't think of any.
What year did you buy the cabin in North Carolina?
Oh, I think we bought the cabin in probably 83 or 84. Let's see, Sprite and Lori came up and built the deck on it. We'd had it a year or two then. And I think Bailey was like maybe 2 or 3, and Kristen would have been 1 or 2. Because we left there and went to a reunion at the farm in North Carolina afterwards. And I think Bailey went with us and Kristen went with Lori and Sprite. So then, let's see, Bill died in 80, I think it was 86 when he had fully retired that we went up there and we stayed for about 6 weeks one time. Otherwise, it would be a couple weeks at a time. But that was nice up there. The cabin was small, but it was big enough for us, and we had a real pretty view. And it was in Franklin, North Carolina.
So when you finally bought this property, did that come because Aunt Brenda was here? Is that why you guys looked for property in this area?
Well, when he decided to retire, he wanted to move into the country. And there really isn't much country in St. Pete, you know, so we looked this, and we had lived here in the area before and we liked it. And so we just started looking in this area. And at the time, this bridge didn't go through, it was just an old wooden bridge. And I don't know whether Brenda was riding horses or what, but we had looked at a place down on the corner of Golf Course and Fort Hamer, but that flooded, they said. And then we looked at one just a couple blocks down, not Spencer Parish, but the one just east of it. And we kind of liked that, but then we decided against it. And then Brenda saw this one, so we came and looked, and it was just land. It didn't have a house on it or anything. But we liked it, so we decided to get it. And the people that we bought it from had bought it from the Reeds, who lived next door at the time when we bought it. And they had cows and things on it. And I don't know who put the pole barn up on it, but evidently it had a house on it near the road. And I don't know what shape it was in, but Mrs. Reed inferred that the people that bought it from them set it on fire so they could collect the insurance. They said lightning started it, but she didn't believe it really. So I don't know what it ever looked like, but there was a lot of junk up in the front area. And the weeds and things were so tall, we didn't really see all that when we bought it, but.
There was a house on this property
Not,
towards the front?
well, we had it, but when the people before us that bought it,
Right.
they had it. And Jim Davis himself lived on this property, according to Rodney Reed. He's the one that told me. And he used to grow cabbages on the property. So, but when we bought it, Mr. Reed lived, now it would be 2 doors over, in the house that Mandy bought. And that house was brought in by Brett Johnson's father. They brought that in and moved it in for them. And then he,
Mandy's old house?
Mhm,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. And then Mr. Reed gave Rodney Reed, his son, land. And so that's why there's a house between me and the Reed's old house, because Rodney bought it and built. So, and then the road out front was a dirt road. And when we moved in, Brett and Brenda had just had an opportunity to vote. They told them they could either vote to get the road paved or fix the bridge. And I think they voted to fix the bridge, but they ended up doing both, so
Well, the bridge was fixed before the road was paved.
that's what I'm thinking.
Because I remember that being dirt road. I remember walking over the old bridge to go to Aunt Brenda's house when you guys were building.
Well,
I
and
mean, it was rickety old wood bridge.
yeah,
it was just
plants were
trees.
growing through
No,
it.
yeah, but it was wood plank. It was wood, but it was just rotted in spots. You had to
Right.
watch where you stepped.
Well,
But the road was dirt still when they fixed that.
Brett put a big pole across the creek, and we used to walk across the
Mm.
pole to get to
Oh,
Brenda's
that's
house.
how I remember getting it.
Yeah.
Was
Well, I
walking
remember
on-
walking across the bridge once or twice.
Because
Trees or
when
something.
Bill died in 88, September of 88, that bridge hadn't been fixed yet because,
Well, so let's go back to that day. So are you here
what day?
the day Grandpa died?
Yes, we moved in April 30th, and he died September 12th. of '88, the same year.
Are you here at the house though?
No, I was teaching school at the time.
When you say are you here, you mean living here, Courtney, or?
Physically here at the house?
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah.
you're
On the day he
teaching.
died.
Right, no, I was gone. I was working. I stopped at the store to pick up some stuff for the house. And when I came in the driveway, there was a pickup truck from the fire station here. And my first thought was that my mother had put something on the stove and forgotten it because she lived with us, you know, and she was getting old. And then when I drove up, Brenda ran out of the house and said, "It's Dad, come in quick." And he was gone when I got here. But they were still trying to revive him, but they knew that he was gone. And then I got kind of in an argument with one of the ambulance helpers because they sent her out to get something. And she was walking back slowly and like she knew probably that he had passed, but she wasn't moving very fast, and I was yelling at her to get in there to see, you know, to give it to him. But and another thing, it was awful because when I came in, strangers were in here. The little girl down the street that lived across the street from Brenda and Brett, her father, I think, had something to do with the fire department. She was wandering around in the house, just looking at stuff. And the Wedstead, the man that lived over there, he was in the utility room looking through the closet. People that I had no idea who they were. I just drove, in order to go to the bathroom, I had to go out and use the pool bathroom to have any privacy.
So what, Granny
What
was
were they
here?
What?
Why were they in the house?
They must have heard the fire truck or something and I don't know. They were here when I got here.
Did Granny give a scenario of what happened?
Well, she said that he had come, he was doing contract work then. So he was working and he came home from St. Pete and he said he didn't feel good and he went in and was changing his clothes. And I don't know what he told her to call 911, that there was something wrong. So she called 911. I don't know whether she called Brenda first and then 911 or the other way. But of course Brenda had to go down Rutland Road and over Spencer and back up because she couldn't drive across the bridge, you know. So I think by the time she got here too, I think he was gone.
What was how did he die?
He had a abdominal aortic aneurysm. And it was so quick that there wasn't anything that they could do.
He was in your bedroom when you came in?
He was laying on the floor in there, yeah. And they were working on him, but like I say, I think they knew, you know, but so, and we had no idea he even had an aneurysm, so it was a complete shock. And it was hard because we had only moved in here 4 months, you know, it was, and I was just thankful that it didn't happen as he was crossing the Skyway Bridge, drive off of that or something, or that it happened 4 months earlier, you know, at least he got to live here for 4 months and he truly loved it, so he was as happy as could be. I can remember riding to work with him one day, going down the road. He was singing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning." And some little quail crossed in front of us, a little family of quail on Jim Davis. But
What year did you retire?
I retired in '96. I had 25 years with the,
So you were
Yeah.
here for a long time?
yeah,
still
I drove
working.
back and forth, yeah, quite a while, not from 88 to 96, yeah. So, and that's the only place only school I ever worked at.
What was your first impression or recollection of Uncle Brett?
Well, you know, I had heard a little bit about him I mean, he was Kim's brother, and Brenda ran around with Kim when we lived in Ellenton. But, and the Johnsons were, they were supposed to be, you know, one of the big families in Ellenton and have money, and so I think Brenda thought she had really made a catch when she caught him. So,
He was much older than her.
well, what, 4 years? He's 70, 71, 4 or 5 years,
Okay.
yeah. And he was working for his dad at the time. And when they started dating, we lived in St. Pete, and then she moved down to Palmetto. So I didn't see them too much when they were dating, really. But, yeah, he was a nice guy.
And what about Uncle Spray?
Well, that was funny. He used to come over, well, Lori met him through a chest of drawers or something. She was looking at it. I think he wanted to sell a chest of drawers or something.
She was with Kathy, wasn't she?
Pardon me?
Wasn't she with
Allstate,
Kathy?
right? I think she met Aunt Kathy at Allstate.
Well, yeah,
They all kind of
from-
worked at Allstate.
Right, yeah. So, anyway, and then they ended up playing, not chess.
Backgammon.
Backgammon.
Oh, Lord.
And that's how that started. And then they never really went much. He'd come over at night, and sit out there with us and watch TV. And the night that he had asked her to marry him, I got up probably 6:30 in the morning. She was sitting outside. Our bedroom was attached to the dining room. She was sitting outside in a chair waiting for us to get up so she could tell us that he had asked her to marry him and that she had said yes. So she was on cloud 9, yeah.
And what about Billy?
Well, that was another little story. I don't know whether we want that on tape or not.
Go for it.
Because, all right, I'm gonna lay it on the line. Vicki had moved in with a girlfriend, so that was good. So she wanted to borrow her father's truck to move at a later date, help somebody move, or it had to do with moving. So he lent it to her. Well, she forgot to give him the keys so he could go to work the next day. So when I called where she had lived, the girl said, well, she doesn't live here anymore. She moved in with Billy. We said, oh, well, we didn't know that. And at that time, that was very risque. People just really weren't doing that. And her father had a fit. I think more to his pride than anything. He did not speak to her for quite a while. I don't know how long it was. In fact, I wasn't sure he was even going to go to her wedding. He was that disturbed about it. But he did, and everybody went on their merry way, so. But it caused quite a little flap in our house. And at the same time, when that happened, my father had died in March. I had a biopsy for cancer in February, and then, like I say, she had her little fling, so
Where cancer of?
my breast. So I've
It
had
wasn't
two.
a fling. We did end up getting married.
How'd that turn out for you?
Yeah. So, health-wise, I've been fairly lucky. I really haven't had, a lot of problems. As you get older, you get some, but when I was younger, I really didn't have a lot of problems. So
Did you deliver naturally with all 3 kids?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they gave me,
Epidural.
yeah, a
Twilight.
bag, yeah, but, And the first time, Vicky was born in the Naval Hospital in, what the heck, Norco, California. And they were very strict. You'd go over there and nobody could go with you, so I was always alone. And they put you on a diet, and they said, I'll never forget it, no bananas, no potatoes, no dessert, and no bread. And I did not, I gained less than 15 pounds. And she weighed 7 pounds, I think 3.5 ounces, so. And then when I delivered, my mom and dad rode over there with me, but they couldn't come in. And so I had to go in that hospital by myself, and they made you walk the halls. You had to walk back and forth to get things moving, and then they had room in, so after she was born and they brought her in the room, you have to take care of them then yourself, you know. And I think they kept me, I think it was 3 days, and then I went home, and they notified Bill, told him about it.
You were 17?
Yeah, because I was 16, almost 17 when I got married. I was 17, almost 18 when I was 17 and 18 in December, and she was born in September, so I had all 3 kids before I turned 20.
Did your water break with any of them?
Yeah, with, I don't remember if it was Brenda or Lori, yeah,
Where were they born?
in San Antonio Hospital,
San Antonio?
up in Upland. Dr. Crutcher delivered both of them. And they were, one was 7 pounds, one was, I think, 7, 1.5. They were all close together in size. When Lori was born, she had something with her throat that she wasn't swallowing right or something, but it was corrected within a day. I don't know, I don't remember exactly what it was, but she had trouble swallowing or something, but other than that, they were all pretty healthy.
Was there anything unique? I know the ride to New York to California, but how about California to Florida? Was there anything, the move here?
From, what do you mean?
When did
Well-
we lose Frisky?
That was moving. Well, from the trip from California to Florida, I drove the camper. We had that loaded with, we couldn't sleep in it or eat or anything. It was loaded. And Bill drove a big U-Haul. And so Sandy came with us then. So we had 4 kids, so they'd switch off. Brenda and Lori would be with me one day, and Sandy and Vicky would be with Bill, and then we'd switch. And we had a dog, and we stopped at the Grand Canyon. That was nice, to let the kids see that. But then when we got to Baton Rouge, the weather was bad, it was pouring, and it kept getting later and later, and we couldn't find a place to stay. Everything was filled because they were having some kind of a convention there. So we finally found this one place, and God, we were happy to get it. And when we opened the door to the room, it really wasn't very much. But anyhow, they had a little restaurant there and so Bill and I were gonna go get a cup of coffee, and the kids were just gonna stay there, you know, get ready to take their showers. When we came back, they were having a fit. The toilet almost fell off the wall. They found chicken bones in a drawer.
We didn't know what kind of bones they were. They were bones.
Oh my, so it was bad. So then we decided we would leave. We didn't know whether they'd give us our money back or not, but they did. And then we had to find another place. We finally found a hotel late at night, and it only had 1 bed in it, but it was good enough. We put up with that, and the kids slept on blankets on the floor. As we continued, we stopped at a park. It wasn't really a park, it was a lake. I can't remember the name of it. I don't know whether we were having lunch there or we stayed overnight. But anyhow, there was water there and the kids went swimming and everything, and the next morning we were getting ready to leave and there was a big sign, no swimming alligators.
Mhm.
Jeez.
Well,
So-
so you said, was there any events from California to Florida, right? But if my memory serves me correct and just speaking, am I wrong in saying Grandpa came over here first to look and you were not necessarily wanting to leave California?
Right, yes.
Grandpa came here
He
and was
moved,
like, I love it, let's move to Florida, and you were like, we just built this house and I love my home. So talk about that too.
well, see, he helped my mother and father move. They moved a year before we did.
Okay,
So he helped them move because they had a boat as well as a camper and stuff. So he drove one thing and they drove another. And then when he got here, he said, oh, it was so nice. Everything was green and you could go fishing, water all over and everything. Plus the fact his family lived in North Carolina or Virginia. And we had no family back there after
Yeah.
they left, you know, it was just us. And so he really wanted to move.
but you had built this home that
Right.
you loved in California.
Yes, yeah, just 4 years earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was strange because the guy that built the house, who actually was a neighbor, said, oh, in 5 years you'll be out of here. And I had said, well, you're crazy, you know, once we get in here, this is it. Because I really liked it, I liked the location, and the thing of it was, Bill could transfer from California to Florida. He wouldn't lose, he had a job when he got here. So, but when we got here, the day we got here, we went to my mother and father's house. They weren't there.
and where was that at?
That was in
Bradenton,
Bradenton,
right?
off of 26th Street. I can't remember what street it was. It was only 3 or 4 blocks south of Manatee Avenue, just off of 26th
Okay.
West. And
But
they,
wait, who lived along the river? Granny's parents? Who lived on the river had a house?
well, my mother and father lived down the river in Riverview.
Riverview.
And my grandmother lived just a block off of the Manatee River on 15th Street
In
in
Bradenton.
Bradenton.
Okay,
Yes,
so whose mother was that?
my father's.
Your father's mother,
Yeah.
okay.
But
So they lived on 26, you guys moved, you came here and
Oh.
looked.
yeah, so we got there and they weren't home. Mosquitoes were terrible. I'm telling you, they knew it was new blood or something.
Oh, yeah.
It was awful. And here they come up, they had been at the La Vista Bar drinking a few drinks. Well, they didn't think we'd get there that early. I was livid.
So you were waiting for them at their
Mhm.
house and they were out drinking?
Yes,
We were
exactly.
outside sitting in.
Those are my kind of people.
So,
That's when we found Howard Johnson's. remember?
yeah, I was gonna say, we went to Howard Johnson's that night for they had a fish fry on, well, I know on Fridays, I don't know if it was other nights, but you could have all the fish and French fries you wanted for a very reasonable price. So we used to go there. But then on our trip, before we got here, after we left the lake where the gators were, we stopped for a lunch and we had our dog with us, Frisky. Well, we ate and we started to get in the truck, and Bill and Sandy and Vicky had left, and Lori and Brenda and I were getting it. Well, where's the dog? Well, we didn't have the dog. Where was he? And at that time, we didn't have phones or anything that you could talk to the person in the other truck. So we looked and looked, because it was a wooded area behind. And we looked and looked, and finally we said, well, we've got to go, because they're getting that much farther ahead of us. And it started raining, and I mean, it rained terrible. I had never been in such a storm, and that was another reason why I didn't like Florida. The whole thing, none of it helped. And so finally, when we caught up with them, I can't remember if we had stopped or we just caught up with them and found out that they had the dog.
Oh,
So-
I thought we didn't have the dog. We had to go back and look for
No, you guys had
we
the
had it?
dog. And we had wasted all that time looking for them, and so, and then like I say, when we got to my mother's and they weren't there, the mosquitoes greeted us, and then they had bought an old house for us to move into, and it was in, the Oneiko area. And it had a house, and then it had like a washroom, and then I think it was like a trailer kind of, or like that, and so Vicky and Sandy slept there, but my gosh, at night you could hear the darn roaches, or I don't know, I said, I'm not staying here. Now, after leaving a nice house in California, staying there, so we started looking, and then we found the one in Ellington, which was okay.
Highland Shores.
Yes,
Right.
Island Shores,
Yeah.
It was on a canal, and of course that made Bill happy.
Do you remember the address there?
No,
It's gone.
offhand, I
Oh,
don't.
is it? I was gonna ask if it was still standing.
It's gone.
The house is gone?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I went down there to try to see it, I don't know why it would be gone, but if I was looking in the right area, we couldn't find it. But it like, because we got it because of the canal, and then I don't think Bill went fishing more than 4 times when we lived here all the while. So that was, I'll tell you, if we hadn't sold our house before we left in California, but if we hadn't sold it by the time we did, we'd have probably moved back, because I hated it here. I just did not like it at all. Well, it was just a whole different way.
With or without your husband?
No, he would have gone back with me, so. But, so you often wonder how your life would be different if you hadn't moved in the first place, you know?
Did you ever think about going back after he passed?
No, not then, but one time we did talk about it. I can't remember when it would have been. We lived in St. Pete. Because I remember us talking about it, because my mother made the remark that if we moved back to California, that she would go to New York and live with one of her sisters. But it never went anywhere. I don't even remember why we were talking about it, you know. Be silly when all you get caught because you move here, and then my father moved here because his parents were here, and then we moved here, and then my parents, you know, were here, and my father was not well. He had emphysema, and I think he had a little stroke actually when we lived in Ellington, and so his health wasn't good.
So,
Tell the
Where
story about when you sold the house,
Which house?
the one in St. Pete, and the people moved in.
Oh, yeah, Bill had died,
oh, that's okay.
and so, trying to think. I think he was still alive when we sold the house, if I remember rightly. And the people had given the realtor a check, and it had been for sale. Well, I don't know whether, I can't remember whether he was alive or not. But anyway, so we thought it was sold, and the people wanted to know if they could move in ahead of time before everything closed, because their apartment that they had been renting, the date was done. So we said, yeah, sure. So one day the realtor called me and said that their check wasn't any good. So they had moved in and out without me even, I mean, I knew they had moved in, I didn't know they moved out. And then when I went to the house, they had put new carpet in, and this was a black couple that had bought it, and the carpet was bright blue shag. And I didn't know if I was gonna get stuck for paying that, or that they had paid it or what, but I never heard anything about it, so I never ended up paying for it. So then I had to list it all over again, and Yeah, I think he was alive when we thought we sold it, and then it took me almost a year